Hi, welcome. Today I want to talk about Victor Hugo and about where to start with his works. Because when you look into what Hugo has written, you will soon discover that there's way more than Les Misérables and Notre-Dame de Paris, which are his two most famous novels, of course. You will also find a big collection of theater plays, poetry, pamphlets, short stories, and a lot of novels. Let's dive in, but first of all, I don't want to decide which one is right for you to pick up. You will have to decide this for yourself. I hope that with this video, I will be able to make the process a little bit more easy for you. But it's just to give you an impression of what is out there and what are some of the best ones to get started with. So I wouldn't start with his criticism, with his pamphlets, with his philosophy, or with his words on history. I would start with a fiction novel. I'm going to go over his fiction works. And the reason why I want to dedicate an entire video on Hugo's fiction works and where to start is because he is a difficult author to read. When you compare him with other French authors like Jules Verne, Alexandre Dumas, these are very easy authors to read. Hugo comes with some challenges. He was deeply involved in politics and he worked this into his novels. When you read Hugo, you will immediately notice that he was a poet because of his style and the way he writes his sentences. There is a lot of philosophy in his books. There are a lot of references to other authors, especially French authors, Greek and Roman authors, ancient classics, and so on. A lot of references to art. You will have to be prepared to do some research because there's a lot of history in his novels. For example, when he speaks about the conflict between revolutionaries and royalists, what was going on at the time in France, it's like you have to have a certain knowledge about what was going on, about what was wrong with the reign of Louis Philippe. All of these things are worked into his novels and make it a bit more difficult to digest and to read. The main problem is that we don't really know what was going on at the time, what the issues were of the time, and yes, it can feel a bit overwhelming. The biggest challenge, however, in reading Hugo is his digressions. And I must say, don't be too afraid because a lot of people overreact, especially about Les Misérables. One of the most popular complaints about Les Misérables is, oh my gosh, he keeps going on and on about the sewer system of Paris. And yes, there's a section about the sewer system of Paris, but I find it super interesting. It is written in such a poetic way, like no one can talk as passionately about the sewer system as Hugo. And it's really not that long and as difficult as his other digressions in Les Misérables. But anyway, don't be scared off by those people. Just know that there will be digressions. It's okay for you to not like them, to skip some of those digressions if you cannot make yourself read them. Because I don't want you to miss out on this amazing story. But anyway, this video isn't about Les Misérables, it's about all of his fiction novels. So I'm gonna go over them chronologically. I'll give you a little bit of information about all of them, and then hopefully you can decide which one speaks most to you and which one seems like the best start. First of all, we have Anne d'Islande from 1823. I love this story. This is a very gothic adventure story set in Norway. So we have the historical setting of Norway, and here we follow Anne d'Islande, who is a monster terrorizing the region. And there's this young officer called Ordner Goldenlue who goes on a quest to find this monster, destroy it, and thus save his father-in-law and the woman he loves. It is very atmospheric. It has political intrigue, it has romance, it has adventure. It feels very gothic. As you will read more and more stories by Hugo, you will notice that he loved the dramatic, he loved gothic, he loved dark stories, as do I, which is probably why he's my favorite author. But it's a good one to start with, actually, because it's not too difficult. There aren't many digressions. In fact, I think this is the book that has the least digressions. And I don't mean short stories, I mean a full novel. I think this one has the least digressions. So 17th century Norway and a monster. Next we have book Jargal, which was published in 1826, and this was his second novel. Now, I must admit that I didn't love this one. It was okay, I guess. But this is taking place during the Haitian Revolution of 1791. And we follow a black man who has been enslaved, and he repeatedly saves a man called Leopold. So this is about a black enslaved man who is actually a hero. I think this is my least favorite of everything that I've read by Hugo, but don't let that stop you at all, because if this speaks to you, then perhaps you should start with this one. Then we go to 1831. And for those who have been following me a while now, you know that this is my favorite novel of all time, right? The Hunchback of Notre-Dame. This is set in the 15th century Paris. It's a very tragic and dramatic novel, so you have to love tragedy. If you don't like death and drama and destruction and heartbreak and misery, then you will not enjoy this. If you need a happy ending, you will not enjoy this. We follow a deformed bell ringer called Quasimodo, a Romani dancer called Esmeralda, and an archdeacon called Claude Frollo, and they are all obsessed with the Romani dancer Esmeralda. This is just a brilliant novel. I cannot recommend it enough, but it's not for beginners. So if you are new to reading older books, to reading classic literature, then I would not recommend starting with this one. However, if you feel comfortable with a slower pacing and a more difficult writing style, so good. We go to 1829, and he has written a short story called The Last Day of a Condemned Man. This is obviously about the final days of a condemned man. We go through his feelings, his thoughts, and this is actually Hugo telling the world that he was against the death penalty. It's easy to read. I have a review on my channel, so if you're interested, go and check it out. It's spoiler-free, by the way. And it's a good one to start with because, as you can see, it's very thin. It's a short story. And if you want to get to know Hugo's style, then this is, of course, a good one. You won't get his usual storytelling because it's more like a story written against the death penalty, but you will get to know his style. Then in 1834, he published Claude Gueux. This was a short story about social injustice, and he would later rework some of the ideas that he put into this novel into Les Misérables later. I have to admit that I haven't read this one yet because for years I have been thinking that it was the same novel as The Last Day of a Condemned Man, but then another title. So I thought it was one and the same book. It is not. And I think it's also a good one to start with because it's short and because it comes before Les Misérables. In 1862, we got Les Misérables. Hugo gifted the world this masterpiece. I just read it for the third time. It seems like it keeps getting better. I would say it's perfectly fine to start with this one, but you have to be prepared for the size because it's really it's a big novel. I'd say take your time, and the digressions can be a bit heavy here, but I think like every page is absolutely worth it. It is such a great novel. We follow a former convict called Jean Valjean, and he is being pursued by a police inspector called Javert. We get historical events, the July uprising of 1832. It's a critique on poverty, inequality, the law. It's about love, struggles, sacrifice. Just read it. In 1866, and this is also one of my favorites, we get The Toilers of the Sea, Les Travailleurs de la Mer. This is set on the island of Guernsey, where Victor Hugo also spent some time in exile because he was a political refugee. We follow a fisherman who is in love with the niece, I think, of a ship owner. And when one of his steamboats gets caught on a reef, the one who can repair the steamship will be able to marry his niece. He fights the sea, he fights storms. There's even a giant octopus. It has such gothic and horror vibes. I loved the atmosphere in this novel. I loved the setting, like the sea, the storms, and you know, the romance in this novel is also top-notch. So if this speaks to you, by all means start with The Toilers of the Sea. Then we get a more challenging novel. We get L'Homme qui rit, The Man Who Laughs. This book, this will be the most difficult novel that you tackle that Hugo has written, because it is full of digressions. The story of The Man Who Laughs is so beautiful. It is stunning, but the digressions are insane in this one. So there's a child who finds a baby girl in a snowstorm, and he saves her. They grow up together in some kind of traveling company, because this boy has been mutilated and he has a permanent smile on his face. It was the inspiration actually for the Joker, played by Heath Ledger. And the baby girl that he saved is called Dea, and she's blind because she has been in the snow for so long. He's mutilated, she's blind, they fall in love. It's so good, it's perfect. It's also a tragedy, it's very dramatic, but it's not the best one to start with, in my opinion. If you want to start with it, fine, but I think chances are high that you will never pick up another Hugo novel again because of the digressions. But it's a really beautiful story, and it's certainly worth your time. However, I would say start with some other works, and if you really love Hugo's style, discover this one. In 1874, we get 93, which is called in English 93. You will find different copies of this one, but it's all the same novel. So it's sometimes it's called 93, sometimes it's called 1793. I have multiple editions and the title always varies. It is obviously set during the French Revolution, 1793, and it's about the human cost of revolution and social unrest. Lots of political conflict. In my opinion, not a good one to start with. Perhaps wait until you have read a couple of Hugo's and then pick this one up. I will not talk about his poetry and his theater plays, but I do want to mention that he has a libretto called, what was it called? I think it's La Esmeralda or Notre-Dame de Paris, but it's a libretto. So if you have read and enjoyed Notre-Dame de Paris, then I think you will also enjoy reading the libretto. So far, I have read the libretto and Hernani, but I wouldn't start with his theater plays. Just so you know, I couldn't find the theater plays in English. I only found Hernani, and I also have this edition, this beautiful, beautiful edition that also has the King's Amusements. Oh, I also read that one. I forgot. I also read the King's Amusements in French, actually. I didn't even know that I had an English edition, but I read it in French. I liked it. Yeah, I wouldn't start with his plays. But to end this video, perhaps we should do a piece of poetry, just for fun. I've only read a couple of poems by him, and I know by heart part of a very long poem in French. But let's just pick a random one. Okay, the translator is always mentioned on the bottom. I just opened my book and I'm gonna read a very short one. From Woman to Heaven. The storehouse of the souls is vast. At first we're charmed and then at last convinced. Two worlds they stand apart, the last the mind, the first the heart. To love, to understand, the heart stops at first, like birds that dart through lowly valleys, but the soul flies upward to the higher goal. The lover takes the archangel's place. A kiss, and then all nature's face is instant changed from gloom of night to dazzling palace of delight. Let love pervade the whole earth through, even to the sprig bedecked with dew, that fallen lies. For, wondrous thing, it forms a nest when comes the spring. Draw back the veil and let us see that blessed nest on woodland tree, and that nest will become a light in forest of the infinite. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope to see you next week.